Hey everybody, welcome back to another tier list. Today I'd like to go over the films of Quentin Tarantino because he's one of my favorite directors. And I've just recently gotten back into a few of his films and rewatched a lot of films I've only seen once or a long time ago, just so it's kind of fresh in my mind. And some of this list has changed to what it would have been before I watched them again or rewatched them. So yeah, he's one of my favorite directors. He's very unique. He has a unique style. If you've seen any of his films or know who he is, he's very dialogue driven. He also has extreme violence that normally comes up randomly throughout his films. That's also quite fun to watch and funny. He has a dark sense of humor that kind of goes through a lot of his films as well. And he kind of messes with history a bit in a few of his films. Like he takes famous situations and historical events and then just mixes them up a bit. So he's got about 9 or 10 films, depending on whether you count Kill Bill as one movie or two movies. It came out in 2 volumes, so I kind of count them as 2 films because they are 2 theatrically released full-length feature films by themselves that do continue from one another. And so I'm going to rank them individually on this list. But anyway, starting off, we have Death Proof. So this is the only film of Tarantino's that I don't own on Blu-ray, so that might tell you a bit about its place on the list. I don't think he's ever made a bad film. However, I think this is the closest he's made to a bad film. It's not an F tier film though. It's probably a D for me. So it's obviously a rip-off, not a rip-off, like a takeoff of the grindhouse 70s genre. And I think he does it quite well. But as for a film itself, it kind of doesn't hit the mark in a lot of ways. It's quite boring, and the dialogue in this film is a bit like it doesn't take you anywhere, and the characters are a bit one note. However, Kurt Russell's character is really cool, Stuntman Mike, and he's got a great scene about halfway through the film, and then about the last 10-15 minutes of the movie is really cool also. But other than that, the film's really quite boring for that first, 45-50 minutes of the movie until the first action scene, and then after that for the next pretty much hour, or almost an hour until the last action scene. Is quite dull too. So the only thing that keeps it from being an F tier film for me are those 2 sequences. And especially the last one, because it's a really impressive stunt drive sequence that is really fun and done really well. It's just a shame that the rest of the movie really couldn't keep up with the quality of the ending of it. So yeah, unfortunately that's the lowest film, but it's still got its moments, and I still like to watch some of those scenes on YouTube. Next up we have Django Unchained from 2012. This was actually the first Tarantino film I ever saw, and maybe that's why it's my favorite, but yeah, it's easy an S tier for me. It's just such a fun, unique film. It's very long, it's very dialogue driven, but there's also some really fun action and violence and adventure throughout the film. Some fantastic performances. Jamie Foxx, DiCaprio, Christoph Waltz, and Samuel L. Jackson are all like at the top of their game in this film. Yeah, it's just so unique and fun. The music's cool, the dialogue's cool, and the action is really like, I think this is where Tarantino's kind of like perfected his style and action in this film. Just the shootout in Candyland at the end, it's pretty fun. It's just a complete bloodbath, and it's over the top and silly, but also really fun to watch at the same time. And yeah, Christoph Waltz, I think he got the Academy Award for supporting actor, and really deservedly so as well. So yeah, it's pretty much a perfect film in my opinion. It's my favorite personally. Next up we have Inglourious Basterds, and this came out in 2009. A lot of people would probably put this in the S tier as well. However, I'm going to put it in the A tier because it's not quite an S for me. I think it does drag at a couple of moments in the middle of the film. There's a few conversations that I think could have been trimmed or cut back a bit. However, for the most part, it's a solid film. That's why it's an A. Brad Pitt's great here. Christoph Waltz is fantastic again here. The opening scene alone, I don't know how long it is, 20 minutes or so, is like perfection. Like that is S tier in and of itself. But yeah, like that could have been a award-winning short film, just the opening 20-minute scene. But like, yeah, throughout it's got some great action and fun adventure as well. The whole cinema theater sequence at the end with the Nazis, and that's pretty fun. And it's a pretty crazy, full-on over-the-top movie. But yeah, it's really good. One of Brad Pitt's better comedical performances as well. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know, really good movie. I really like it quite a lot. Next up we have Kill Bill Volume 1, and these are some of the ones that I recently rewatched because I'd only seen them once. and I actually ended up liking them a bit more than I did the first time. So Kill Bill Volume 1 is very high A tier for me as well. It's just so fun and unique and creative, and it's like this big blockbuster. It's kind of samurai action film, revenge thriller, and it's got so many different elements in it too. Like the sequence, it's like a almost 10-minute long anime scene in the middle of the film, which is actually really cool and really well done. You've obviously got the whole crazy 88s fight scene at the end, which is extremely graphic and gory, but in a comedic way as well. The final scene with Lucy Liu at the end, the opening fight scene, there's just some really cool stuff here. And the Hanzo sword stuff when she goes to get the Hanzo sword in Japan and Tokyo. So yeah, it's a really good movie. Most people say it's better than the second one, to be honest. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I think they're pretty much equal. So yeah, saying that, I'll put number 2 or part 2 right next to it in the A tier, because I think part 2 is just as good, possibly even better than the first film. It takes a bit of a turn as far as its style goes. It turns more into like a spaghetti western themed style film. And you know, you've got the scenes with Bud, played by Michael Madsen, and Ellie as well, played by Daryl Hannah, as the other people she's trying to take out in this film. And you've got the whole sequence of her trying to, you know, get out of being buried alive, and then the flashbacks to her training with Pei Mei. And the final showdown, obviously, with Bill, which I also thought that was a little bit overlong and didn't really pay off the way I hoped it would or should have. So yeah, the last half hour of Kill Bill 2, I think, could have been shortened and maybe neatened up a bit, but overall, they make a really fantastic double feature or extended film to watch together. Yeah, they're pretty much equal, I think. I know a lot of people prefer the first one, but I think the second one's just as good. Next up, we have Jackie Brown. This is one that I'd only seen once also, and I decided to rewatch the other day, and I actually enjoyed it quite a lot more this time, because I originally would have put it in the D tier with Death Proof, because I thought it was pretty average. However, after watching it a second time, I'm going to put it up in the B tier. I even actually ordered this on Blu-ray. I liked it that much. It's definitely different for a Tarantino film. It's probably his least violent film. There's a couple people get shot throughout the movie, but it's not graphic and it's not the focus or anything like that. It's just kind of like this really interesting story about these characters and this heist that's in the planning with Jackie Brown, who's kind of playing both the police and the gangsters and trying to escape through the middle, but this really dangerous game. And it's got a great soundtrack, a great cast, and yeah, I just really enjoyed watching it this time. There was something about it that I guess I watched it like when I was a young teenager, like 10 years ago, and didn't really see much in it because I was expecting, you know, Tarantino's usual style. But actually, if you watch it knowing kind of what you're going in for, I think you'll enjoy it more. So I think it's a solid B. Yeah. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a really good film. It's easily an A tier film for me. Yeah, I watched this. I didn't actually watch it when it first came out for some reason. I just didn't get around to it. And it was about a year later maybe that I watched it with my brother, and we both really had a lot of fun with it. And then I actually rewatched it about a week ago now. And yeah, it's a really great film. Like, there's not really much of a story overall to it, but just the characters, you know, Brad Pitt and Leo's characters, they're kind of like these best friends who are helping each other and mentoring each other, and almost, yeah, they're just there for each other like buddies and stuff. And, you know, one of them plays the lead actor and one's the stuntman for him. And it just shows their careers that are kind of on a slope downward now after they've kind of lived their glory days. And yeah, it's really interesting, as well as the ending, how it kind of twists the history of the Manson family murders and things like that, and makes it a more, I don't know, positive kind of ending, I guess, a more fun, wish it happened this way kind of ending, kind of like they did with Inglourious Basterds. Margot Robbie was good for the small role she had in the film. And yeah, it's his most recent film, and actually, yeah, I like it quite a bit. I think it's possibly his funniest movie as well. There's not much action or violence in this film until the last act, or the last scene, I mean the last half hour maybe, where it goes full on, but it's actually really funny as well in those moments. So yeah, I really, really like that film. It's easily an A. Pulp Fiction, I rewatched 2 nights ago, and it's an S tier film, obviously. Most people love Pulp Fiction, and it is a fantastic movie. The way it's able to tell its story out of order, and go back and forth to certain characters and situations, and then you eventually see how they connect, and it's quite cleverly done actually, and it's not confusing in the way that it might sound that it's structured, but it's actually I think it works a lot for the film rather than having it just play out in a linear kind of fashion. And yeah, like John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, everyone in this film's like really good. It's quite funny, it's quite intense and over the top and violent in some sequences, but overall it's a fantastic movie and easily an S tier film. Most people seem to say it's the best Tarantino film, but I still prefer Django personally. So next we have Reservoir Dogs, the first film by Tarantino. Another one that I rewatched. I pretty much rewatched almost all of these over the last few weeks, but it's a really great first film. I don't think it's one of my favorites. It's easily a B tier though with Jackie Brown. You can see his style right from the get-go, like the action, the violence, the dialogue, the intensity to it. What I like is that it's a clear-cut film that just has a beginning, middle, and end, and then it doesn't have any of the fat that a lot of his other films have, where they're like 2.5 to 3 hours long. This film's like 100 minutes, so it's really everything that's supposed to happen happens, and it doesn't drag at all. Like a lot of his films seem to have sequences or scenes or moments that just drag on for too long. But yeah, this first film really is quite tight. It doesn't have any of that. It's got a great cast. You've got a lot of his usuals that he would go to work on with later, like Michael Madsen, Harvey Keitel, Steve Buscemi, and a few others, and Tarantino's in the film as well, like he is in most of his films. But yeah, it's a good movie. Not great, but it is good. Last but not least, we have The Hateful Eight, his second most recent film. A lot of people seem to be on the fence with this, but most people seem to dislike it, which I really don't understand, because personally for me, it's another S tier film. That might seem a bit high even for a lot of people, but for me it's S tier. Like, I had the best time watching this in the cinema when it came out. I just thought it was fantastic, spending 3 hours with these characters in this haberdashery during a blizzard, trying to figure out the murder mystery. It's kind of like just like a board game almost, like trying to work out like Cluedo or something. But it's really clever and it's really well done. The characters are interesting. The musical score by Ennio Morricone, which is an original score for this film, was great. It's possibly the best looking Tarantino film, like the way it was shot. And yeah, I don't really have any negatives about it, to be honest. Like, a lot of people say it's too long because it's almost 3 hours. I think it is his longest film, and I don't have a problem with the film being that long if it's interesting the whole way through. And for me, The Hateful Eight is one of those films that just works the whole way through. The violence is graphic and extreme when it happens, but it's also really funny. And yeah, I watched it a couple times since it's been out in cinemas, and I've always really enjoyed it still, even after you find out what the mystery is and who the killers are and all this stuff. The first time watching it, the second time and third time and fourth time, you go back and see things that you wouldn't be looking for the first time, so it works really well that way. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's all Tarantino's movies so far. I have seen other films that he's worked on, like written and directed, as far as like anthologies and things like that, and TV episodes and stuff, but these are his actual just theatrically released films so far. So yeah, I'd highly recommend pretty much all of his films except for Death Proof. And yeah, like I said, I own all of them as well except for Death Proof. So yeah, if you haven't seen them, check out some of these films, but most likely you have. So yeah, thanks guys for watching this video. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.